Hey everyone! We are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content and it is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now as we proceed. Subscribe to this channel right now because it is late, the rest of the baseball world is asleep, and the Toronto Blue Jays just detonated a bomb in the middle of spring training that changes every single conversation we have been having about this rotation for the past 3 weeks. It is official. Max Scherzer is back with the Toronto Blue Jays. The signing dropped past midnight on a weekday, courtesy of a bombshell tweet from Jon Heyman that lit up every phone screen belonging to every Blue Jays fan who happened to still be awake, and the ripple effects of what Ross Atkins just did are going to be felt across every roster decision, every trade conversation, and every competitive projection surrounding this team from this moment until the final out of the 2026 season. The move that has been building in the background of every spring training video and every rotation analysis and every Eric Lauer trade conversation for weeks has finally, officially, undeniably happened. And it is even more exciting than the anticipation suggested it would be. Let us start with the signing itself and what it represents, because the temptation to immediately jump to the downstream implications is strong but would shortchange the moment that deserves to be properly celebrated before the analytical deconstruction begins. Max Scherzer is one of the greatest pitchers in the history of professional baseball. 3 Cy Young Awards. More than 3,000 career strikeouts. A resume that includes dominant seasons across multiple franchises and multiple decades that will earn him a first-ballot Hall of Fame induction when he eventually steps away from the sport permanently. He is 41 years old. His 2025 season produced a 5.19 ERA in limited appearances, and the numbers do not leap off the page with the authority that his earlier peak seasons did. But this is a man who pitched in Game 7 of the World Series last year for this organization. A fact that tells you everything the numbers alone cannot tell you about what Scherzer brings to a pitching staff beyond the statistical lines that get thrown around in analytical discussions. He competed in the biggest moment available to a professional baseball player, on the largest stage the sport offers, and he delivered. That is not a narrative constructed around declining production. That is documented evidence of a competitor whose will and preparation and experience remain at a level that justifies organizational investment regardless of what the ERA looks like in the cold light of a spreadsheet. The terms of the deal are still being confirmed as this video is being recorded. Jon Heyman broke the news and the specific financial details are still emerging in real time, but the expectation circulating among reporters and analysts who have been tracking these negotiations closely is a 1-year deal in the range of $10 million. That number, if it proves accurate, represents a significant discount from what Scherzer was earning at the height of his market value and reflects the specific negotiating dynamic of a 41-year-old pitcher returning to an organization that values what he provides beyond the conventional metrics. The Blue Jays have been in serious discussions with Scherzer for weeks. Ben Nicholson-Smith reported the escalating nature of those talks a week ago, and anyone who has followed Ben Nicholson-Smith's reporting understands that he does not put his credibility behind a story like that unless the information is solid. Tonight, the information became official. The sides worked out the right deal. It just took a while, as Heyman noted, to get there. And the deal they got to is one that makes obvious, overwhelming sense for both parties. Now let us talk about what this signing actually does to the Blue Jays rotation, because the picture that assembles when you add Scherzer to what was already one of the most interesting and most deep starting pitching groups in the American League is genuinely extraordinary. Kevin Gausman and Dylan Cease are your 1 and 2 legitimate frontline starters who anchor the rotation with the kind of quality and consistency that playoff-caliber teams are built around. Trey Savage is your electric young ace in development, being managed carefully on an innings limit that we discussed in detail in yesterday's video, whose ceiling is so high that the organization is willing to accept short-term workload constraints to protect what he represents long-term. Shane Bieber is expected to return to full health and full effectiveness in late April or May, adding legitimate rotation depth at exactly the point in the season when the accumulated wear of a long schedule begins to expose teams that built their starting pitching plans without sufficient backup. Jose Berrios, finally healthy after pitching through a bicep tendon issue for the entirety of last season, brings genuine third starter upside if his arm holds together the way the reports from camp suggest it should. Cody Ponce, who John Schneider confirmed yesterday is a locked-in rotation starter rather than someone who still needs to earn his place through spring competition, adds another arm to a group that is becoming almost impossible to attack. And now, layered on top of all of that, Max Scherzer, who is expected to ramp up gradually with a target readiness date of late April or May, arrives to provide veteran presence, competitive fire, and the specific mentorship and leadership influence that organizational decision-makers value in ways that conventional statistics were never designed to measure. The mentorship dimension of this signing is the part that deserves its own section and its own serious consideration, because it goes to the heart of why the Blue Jays made this move at this price for a 41-year-old pitcher with a 5.19 ERA last season. This is not a franchise that is signing Scherzer because they believe he is going to throw 200 dominant innings and contend for an ERA title. This is a franchise that is signing him because they have Trey Savage developing into something special and they want the man who mastered the craft of pitching across 3 decades and on 3 different teams and in every conceivable pressure situation available in professional baseball sitting in the same locker room, sharing the same meeting rooms, and standing beside him in the bullpen before starts. They have Ricky Tiedemann coming back from Tommy John and working his way toward a big league role, and they want him to have access to someone who understands the specific psychology and physical management of a pitcher navigating a long-term arm recovery while trying to establish himself at the highest level of the sport. They have Adam Macko building toward a major league debut, and they want the preparation that debut requires to be informed by the wisdom of a Hall of Fame caliber competitor who has been in every situation those young arms will eventually face. You cannot put a number on what Scherzer provides in that context. The Blue Jays are trying to anyway. $10 million seems to be the organizational estimate of what that combination of starting depth and developmental mentorship is worth, and by any reasonable assessment, it is money well spent. The impact on the Eric Lauer situation is the immediate roster consequence that is going to generate the most discussion in the hours and days following this announcement, and it deserves direct and honest analysis. Mitch Bannon, reporting just days ago in anticipation of exactly this scenario, was explicit about what a Scherzer signing means for Lauer. It makes his path to starts even cloudier, and it makes him potentially more expendable as the Blue Jays now have more established big league options throughout the rotation depth chart. That analysis is correct and the math behind it is straightforward. With Gausman, Cease, Savage, Bieber, Berrios, Ponce, and now Scherzer all occupying spots in the rotation pecking order, Lauer's opportunities for the consistent starts he has publicly stated he needs and wants are essentially non-existent. The Fangraphs projection that had him receiving approximately 2% of rotation appearances already reflected this reality before Scherzer's name was added to the list. With Scherzer now officially aboard, that projection does not change in Lauer's direction. The Minnesota Twins and the Atlanta Braves remain the most discussed trade destinations, both dealing with pitching injuries that create genuine organizational need for starting pitching of Lauer's caliber and contract value. The signing tonight accelerates the timeline of that conversation from something the Blue Jays would address before opening day to something they need to address very soon, because carrying Lauer on a roster where his opportunities for starts are essentially theoretical is not fair to him and does not maximize his trade value in the way that dealing him while he is healthy and motivated and working toward a role that actually interests him would. The Jose Berrios situation is similarly clarified and similarly complicated by tonight's news. Berrios, pitching on a contract that carries real money and real organizational commitment, now finds himself in a rotation where a team that already had arguably more starting pitching depth than any single roster needs has added one more legitimate name to the pile. The tension that has been building around his contract situation, his health questions, and the organizational uncertainty about what he represents going forward does not disappear with Scherzer's arrival. If anything, it intensifies, because now the question of what the Blue Jays do with a pitcher of Berrios' salary and profile in a rotation that is overloaded with options becomes more urgent rather than less. A fully healthy Berrios is a legitimate third starter caliber arm who belongs in any competitive rotation. A Berrios who is still working through the effects of the bicep tendon issue that compromised his entire 2025 season is a question mark that a rotation of this depth does not absolutely need to accommodate. The organizational patience extended to him will be tested by the performance he produces as spring training progresses, And the Scherzer signing means that patience has a somewhat shorter leash than it might have had in a rotation less abundantly stocked with alternatives. The broader organizational message being sent by this signing at this hour on this night in the middle of spring training is worth acknowledging for what it says about the ambitions of this front office and the seriousness with which they are approaching the 2026 season. This is not a team that made it to the World Series last year and decided that the roster which got them there was sufficient to get them back. This is a team that saw its depth questions, identified the specific vulnerabilities, particularly in the rotation when Savage's innings limits and Bieber's delayed return are factored in, and went out and addressed them with a name that carries both competitive value and organizational value beyond what any simple ERA calculation could capture. Ross Atkins does not sleep past midnight when there is a meaningful roster move to be made. He did not sleep past midnight tonight. And the Blue Jays rotation that wakes up tomorrow morning is a different and more formidable entity than the one that went to sleep before Heyman's tweet landed. The reaction from the fan base is going to be enormous, and it is entirely deserved. This is a good signing. It is an exciting signing. It is the kind of move that makes a championship-caliber roster feel even more capable of sustaining the kind of long, grinding, adversity-filled journey that producing a World Series title requires. Scherzer is going to be a pitcher and a coach and a mentor and a competitor and a presence in that locker room, and all four of those roles matter in different ways and at different moments across a 162-game season that will test every dimension of what this organization has built. Are you all in on this signing? Drop your reaction in the comments right now. The rest of the baseball world is asleep, but this community is very much awake, and this is exactly the kind of breaking news conversation that the comments section was designed for. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel so you do not miss the full breakdown video coming tomorrow morning with all the confirmed details, and share this video immediately because every Blue Jays fan you know needs to wake up to this news. Max Scherzer is back with the Toronto Blue Jays. Ross Atkins did not sleep. And neither should you. Let us go Blue